Welcome back. Today, I want to talk about the difference between pain and suffering and the impact that has on your mindset. A question I get quite a lot is, are endurance athletes just masochistic? It's a great question. And I think a lot of people are asking it, including apparently ChatGPT. So I was building out a lesson for a course into building endurance mindset for new triathletes. And so just for fun, I decided to ask ChatGPT what it thought an endurance mindset entailed. And like, what's the number one thing I need to make sure I tell athletes about having an endurance mindset? And ChatGPT told me to make sure I told athletes to embrace suffering. And I was like, whoa there. I think we need to have a little come to Jesus there because that is absolutely not what endurance sports is about. Like, sorry, David Goggins, if you want to do endurance sports for many years and you want to be consistent and you actually want to enjoy what you're doing for a long time, you need to have a strong endurance mindset. And if you're looking to embrace suffering for many years, that is no way of doing it. That sounds awful. Who wants to be an endurance athlete if all you're doing is embrace suffering? That sucks. No, thank you. So I prefer to think of it in a really different way. And I think the difference is important. And so I think the difference comes between pain versus suffering. And I like to think of it more along the lines of a Buddhist principle, which is pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So let's not confuse the difference between pain. So when we're thinking of sports, that would be like physical pain, physical discomfort. Also, we're talking about emotional pain, emotional discomfort, right? Those are all things that are inevitable in sports as humans. Like, this is all part of the human experience. This is what we signed up for. Suffering, though, is what we do to ourselves. It's when we keep going back to the pain and we make it things about ourselves. We make it mean things about the future that maybe are true or maybe not true. That's a totally different thing. But the way that we portray endurance sports and the way we portray sports, the way we portray like being awesome at things or being a badass, right, is that somehow we're better if we make things harder. If the physical pain is worse, if we overcome more and endure more suffering, somehow that brings us to a new state of being. We wear this as like a badge of honor, when in fact it's quite the opposite. It actually takes more strength and more courage to create a mindset that keeps us away from suffering, that keeps us detached from it, than it does to keep us in it. It is much easier to stay inside suffering. It is so much easier to stay inside thought loops and to keep making up stories and to keep making things mean terrible things about you or terrible things about others and to keep those awful thought loops. That is so much easier. And that's what suffering is. It is much more difficult, and it takes an endurance mindset and it takes courage to bring yourself out of those stories, to keep yourself detached from the suffering. That you should wear with a badge of honor. So let me explain the difference. When you sign up for a race, you're signing up for pain, and a lot of it. Physical pain, mental pain, emotional pain. And emotional pain, I mean, because you have to feel a lot of uncomfortable feelings and you have to face probably some emotions of maybe you won't do it, possibly failure. Like, are you worth it? Can you really do this? You have to look at limiting beliefs. So you're going to have a lot of probably uncomfortable emotions that I don't typically like to have. And so there's emotional pain in there. And when you sign up, you're like, yes, let's go. I will take that. Because you want to grow. Pain is inevitably a part of growth. You cannot grow without pain. Again, part of the human experience, pain is inevitable. It doesn't always mean that there's a bad outcome. Pain is just something that we have to do to grow, to experience as humans. But that's why I love racing so much. That's why I love anyone who is brave enough to put on a bib, because it is bravery. Don't let people poo-poo this as, oh, it's just a race. No, it is brave to put on that bib because you're like, sign me up for whatever this experience is ahead of me. Yes, it will be physically painful. I'm in for it. Yes, it'll be emotionally painful. Sign me up. Yes, it's going to be mentally hard. Let's go. Anybody who puts on a bib and says, I want that, I want to grow, I love it. That is amazing. I think that is one of the most amazing things we can do as humans is say, absolutely, I'm in for that challenge. Let's go. So that's what you're signing up for. That kind of pain, that is inevitable. We want that to grow. But suffering is not pain. Suffering is what we do to ourselves, and it is optional. Suffering is the story we put on top of pain. It's what we make pain mean. So if your legs are hurting, right, that's physical pain. Suffering then would be the judgment of the legs hurting, would be the story that your legs shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't have pain at all, that your body is breaking down, that you can't go anymore, that it hurts too much to go, that you're not in shape, that you're crampy, that you should have done breakfast differently, that you're not as good as your friend, that you should be faster than your friend, that now you should walk. And the spiral goes on and on and on. That is getting stuck into thought loops, and that is absolutely causing you suffering. And that's important to know the difference. The physical sensation, inevitable, but all those stories on top of it, that adds to, and that actually is suffering. Being resilient and building endurance mindset means that you will absolutely experience a shit ton of physical pain. You're asking for it. And it means you accept that you'll be mentally, emotionally uncomfortable. But when you're resilient and you have an endurance mindset, it means you can detach the pain from the meaning. You don't get caught up in the stories. You don't make the pain mean something about yourself. And you also don't resist it. You're not surprised by its existence. That's an important part too. So many times people sign up for races and they're like, oh my God, this is really hard. You're like, yes. What did you expect? Of course it's hard. This is the point, right? So you don't want to resist it too and be like, oh no, like this is too hard. This isn't supposed to be this hard. Like this isn't supposed to happen, right? This something's really wrong. Like, no. Also, pain's supposed to be there because we're humans and this is what happens. And we're doing a race, doing something hard. Of course it's supposed to. That's okay too. That's fine. So think of it like this way. Think of a race. And you've done a race, you probably have had really high highs and really low lows. With a totally wild, unmanaged mind, right? When you get super high, you are like riding the wave that is amazing. You're like, I feel so good. My legs feel so good. I am going to kick ass this race. This is going to be the most amazing thing. Oh my God, I feel so great. And you kind of think like this is going to stay this way forever. So you probably run a little bit too fast. You probably maybe forget to hydrate or your nutrition a little bit. And then inevitably you start to come off of the high. And then you think, oh shit, something's gone wrong. Oh no, I'm losing it. It was supposed to stay this way. It's not supposed to, like, oh no, it's supposed to be amazing forever. And then you start to blame it like, oh no, this is my fault. This is totally my fault. Or maybe this is somebody else's fault. Like somebody didn't train me well enough, or that person cut in front of me, or it's the weather's fault, or I'm so terrible. And then you start judging yourself for slowing down, and then you slow down more, and then you lose focus, and then you focus on the physical pain, and then you focus on it more, and then it gets bigger, and you slow down more, and it gets worse, and then you're just in this low spot, and you're lower, and you're lower, and you're lower, and you're in the suffering. That is the suffering. And you're looping back in it, and you're looping back into it. And that sucks. You do not want to embrace that shit. And endurance mindset's in the middle. Resiliency is in the middle. Yes, you can ride the highs a bit, but you also know they're temporary. So yeah, ride the highs, and this is a really good time, but this isn't going to last. And so when you come down, you know that nothing's gone wrong. You knew it wasn't going to last. That's okay. And when you get low, you can problem solve. You can stay out of those thought loops. You don't make it mean terrible things about yourself or that your race is over. You stay focused on your plan. You keep moving forward. You put your focus where it matters, and then you come up out of the lows back to the middle. So think of the difference. One is you're going extremely high and extremely low, up and down, up and down, up and down. That takes so much energy. It's absolutely exhausting. And you're not really moving very fast in a direction forward. You're kind of just up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you're in the middle, one, you're saving a lot of energy and you're progressively going forward in the direction that you want to be moving. So when I think of suffering, I think of my CrossFit days. And a guy I used to work out with would write in chalk next to him, like, embrace the suck. And I get the idea of it, right? And I get it. Like an all out max effort for like 5 minutes, you need like all the aggression of like seeing red and like bleeding from the eyeballs you can. I totally get it. And like, I totally feel that. And like, on group rides, sometimes we just like hang on to the wheel. But you cannot do that in endurance sports. You cannot embrace the suck for 10 hours. You will burn out too fast. It's just not possible. And you can't do that in life. Why would you want to? Why would you want to live your life always looking for suffering, always bringing it on, always embracing it? Whatever you put your energy towards, you're going to find it. If you keep on putting your energy towards to embrace suffering, you're going to keep finding it and you're going to keep embracing it. You don't have to live your life that way. It doesn't have to be that way. If you're an endurance athlete, you have to be able to put your mind and your thoughts into a place that blocks out time, that blocks out doubts, where your brain screams at you. You have to be able to quiet that. You have to be able to find the flow through the ups and the downs and know they are both temporary, and keep directing your energy in the direction you want to go, and not diving into lows and getting stuck in those stories, and not freaking out when the highs start to drop. I get it. The suffering can look really cool. It can be really badass. It seems really awesome in like 90-second reel clips. I get it. You conquered this. I suffered through this. Oh man, like look what I was able to muscle through. But I think if you find, when you listen to some of the best endurance athletes in the world, what I have found in my personal experience working with athletes is that when you reach a state of flow, of detachment, of this middle way, where time doesn't exist, where you're just in your body and you're not in those stories, you're not in the drama, you're just moving in the direction you need to go, that is where your full potential is met. It's not in the screams, it's not in the force, but it's in the letting go. So the first time I ever really understood this as an athlete, I was in an Olympic distance race. And I was at the very end of it. I had like a mile and a half to go, and I was winning my age group for like the first time. And I was like, oh man, I'm doing it. Like, oh, I was like full gas. And so I was in a lot of pain. I was exhausted. And so I went to my head, like, what's a motto I know? I was like, okay, embrace the suck. Cause I had been in CrossFit for years. That's like where I came from. I was like, all right, yeah, embrace the suck. I'm going to embrace the pain. Like, I got this. I'm going to power through. And so I kept on thinking that, and it made it so much worse because I kept diving into the suffering. I was like, okay, this hurts even more. I'm going to have to like muscle through it even more. And the brain's like, yeah, this hurts even more. You're right. This is terrible. And then I tried to like muscle through it even more. And I kept on getting like angrier, and I was like fighting, and it became harder and harder. And it hurt more, and I got slower and slower. And I realized that this is not working. This might work for a max effort deadlift. It might work for a 3-minute sprint, but with a mile left to go, in no way was this going to work. And I couldn't just pretend like it didn't exist. I can't go and be like, oh, this isn't painful at all. Because my brain's like, sure as shit, this is painful. Like, what are you talking about? This sucks. So that didn't help at all. So what I remembered in that moment is what my coach Marilyn told me. She said, when it starts to hurt and you're going fast, say, this is the sensation it takes to run fast. It's not ignoring the pain. It doesn't dive you deep into the suffering. It's true. And so I started to say that again and again and again. This is not pain. Nope. This is the sensation it takes to run fast. All of a sudden, I didn't need to muscle my way through it. In fact, my legs got a little bit lighter. My body got a lot lighter. The physical pain was so much less. And my cadence picked up, and so did my speed. I didn't have to be angry. I didn't have to fight. I could actually just lean into the run and start to flow through it. I wasn't focusing on the pain because it was just a sensation. And I ran faster, and I ran faster, and I ran faster. That is flow. That is endurance. That is the middle way. You're not ignoring the pain, but you're definitely not diving into it, and you're not making it mean things about you. And you don't keep bringing it on. You don't have to bring on that suffering. The pain of this is inevitable. Pain of racing hard is inevitable. Pain of going long distance is inevitable. But all that extra suffering, all those extra stories, all those things to bring on top of it to make it hard to judge yourself with, all the extra suffering, that is all optional. And if you actually want to be really good at endurance sports, and you want to be good at long distance, and you want to do really hard things, you have to understand the difference of the pain that you will experience, And then you have to know how to not add a lot of emotional and mental weight on top of that, that will then cause the suffering, because that's not going to get you anywhere. And that's definitely not going to get you to the end of the finish line, at least not in a really happy place. And it certainly is not going to help make endurance sports a part of your life, because it'll just make it so damn hard. So, what's the practical use for this? My suggestion is to start with awareness. So, you could even think of like your last race or a hard workout or the next time you have a hard session, and just see if there's any place where you're actually creating the suffering. So, is there anywhere where you are having the pain? Yes. But are you making that pain mean things about yourself or about other people? Right? Sometimes we just like to blame everything on somebody else. Right? So, where is it? Are you making it mean that you're not as good or you're out of shape? I love sometimes when we're like, oh, this pain means I'm not very fit. And like, fit is so subjective. Like, we like to use these vague terms, but we really don't have anything to back it up with. Or you're not good enough, or you just don't have it on the day. What are you making that mean about you? That's the suffering that we're getting at. And then what did you do when you started thinking that? What happened? And then the final question is like, what would happen if you didn't do that? What would have been different? What if you didn't ever put that extra meaning on top of what that pain was? Just by starting to be aware of how this plays out in your life and training and racing can have a really huge impact on your mindset. When you're able to get to this place, when you're in long distance races and everything hurts and your brain's screaming at you to stop and it's trying to tell you all the reasons why you should stop, and the pain has all these different meanings, and like, oh my God, you have no idea, like panic, 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 panic. And you're able to look at that and detach from all the stories and say, like, I hear you, brain. I totally get you want me to stop. You want me to dive into all these meaning, all these crazy stories, but I'm not, because I'm going to keep going no matter what. And I'm just going to do this until I stop. And I'm just going to stay here. And I'm going to stay in this flow. That is like magic. And that's when you reach your full potential. That's when you see what else is on the other side. That is having an endurance mindset. And that has nothing to do with suffering. That's the opposite. So ChatGPT definitely had it wrong. And don't worry, I typed like a whole thing back to it. I was like, update this to your memory. That is not what endurance mindset is. It is not about suffering. It is the opposite. And if you need more help, I have a free mindset guide. And it is just 7 quick ways to shift your mindset. I call it mindset reset hacks. And these are other quick ways just to start to shift your brain to how do you have an endurance mindset? How do you start to shift to that middle way so you're not up and down all the time? How do we start to detach from stories? How do we start to create something we want, move the direction we want to go? There's a lot of really great tips in there. So you can check it out. You can download it at join.findingendurance.com/mindset hacks. And thank you so much for being here. I'll catch you next time.